Well, hello, everyone, and I am so excited to talk to two friends that I've known for, we were thinking about possibly up to 30 years. I've had a chance to work with them in many, many philanthropic, wonderful ventures across those 30 years. We're, of course, talking about Kristine and Glen Fladeboe, the Fladeboe folks, and we're talking about farmland today. We're out here in beautiful Willmar. Thank you for getting me out here to Willmar. What a beautiful drive from the city. You really realize that we are in the beautiful breadbasket of the country, right?
Oh, it's just stunning. It was a beautiful drive for me this morning. But Belinda, before we start this conversation, number one, my sister and I are delighted to have you in Willmar today. But it's important for us to shine a light on you. What a remarkable career. I mean, you just retired from KARE. You know, I think of all the nights that I've spent in ballrooms with you and Kristine raising money for, literally tens of millions of dollars for nonprofits. And congratulations. I hope you're loving it. Are you loving it?
It's new. It's
Yes.
new. It's just been about 2 weeks. So it still feels like PTO. But the fact that I'm not worried about every cloud and the fact that I'm in my pajamas at night and not in makeup is really quite wonderful. So I'm really enjoying that. And I'm really enjoying doing things like this and being able to venture into, areas that I've never been able to do before, and then continue to do philanthropic things with the two of you, which I love. I know every time I walk into a ballroom to do something and I know that one of you is going to be with me or someone from your team, I'm always like, it's going to be a great night. And we always have fun. And think about the dollars that we have raised, the two of you and your company. But, I just think that that's, a gift that we were able to give. So thank you for having me. And this subject matter is so interesting to me. I grew up in a rural part of Wisconsin, and all my neighbors were dairy farmers. I went to high school with all dairy farmers. I understand the family farm and what it means to the family. But I cannot imagine what it's like when the decision is made to sell the farm. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Basically, when it comes to farmland that families decide to sell, it is really an interesting thing when it comes to value and trends. And that continues to evolve daily, every minute, right?
Well, and I'm going to have Kristine talk about the emotion of this. But, you've known us for years and benefit ballrooms and doing nonprofit events. But Kristine and I, we grew up on a farm just north of Willmar. Our parents started this auction business in 1978. Matter of fact, you may not know this, Belinda, but I was working for WCCO TV in college and right after college. And then our dad had a very significant heart attack and a stroke. And both of us left our jobs at the time. We went back to our family business and we owned Fladeboe Land that sells farmland across Minnesota, and then Fladeboe Advancement that works with all these nonprofits. The core and key thing for our career has been, we've lived this. We grew up with it. We've seen our parents have to deal with inheriting land, but then negotiating with their siblings or selling it. And, when you're selling a family farm, and I think of all the families from Edina or Eden Prairie that call and they'll say, Glenn, Mom just died. She's 91 years old. We've owned this farm for 130 years. This farm is like a part of our soul. We spent every weekend there, or we grew up picking rocks there, or, I went on my first date with my husband on this farm, or it is a highly emotional thing. For most of our families that we work with. And I think, Kristine, for you and I, our careers this would not have been the right fit. And it was God's plan or part of our personal life plan. But it was the key for us that we grew up with this, the emotion of it and the context of how big of a deal it is to sell the family farm.
So you guys know firsthand. So it's not like you're just figuring out what these people are feeling like. You know what they feel like, right?
It's really in our blood. As Glenn said, growing up on a family farm and our dad being an auctioneer, our dad selling real estate, our dad being a farmer, just really feeling the impact of him farming that ground and what it meant to him to steward the land and take over the family farm that his dad ran. It is something that we have grown up with, we have felt, we have a passion for farmland, but what we're even more passionate about is families and walking alongside of them, as Glenn said, often at a very emotional time. When they decide to sell the family farm, For most people, it's been in the family 50 years, 100 years, 130 years. And so it's a really big deal to walk beside a family at that time.
Yeah. And even if they know in their heart and in their soul and in their pocketbook that it is the right thing to do, the emotions are one thing, but then you come upon situations that are really difficult because not everyone gets along and that whole thing. So these are things that you have to get through as well, I imagine, with families. And you end up being not only the auctioneer, not only the person selling it, but maybe a counselor through this whole thing, right?
Exactly. And Kristine and I, we're not the only ones in our company that have this story. One of our agents in Lackaprow County, Brian Fernholtz, I went to Hamline University with him. Brian grew up on a family farm. He's now a real estate agent. He's lived this his entire life. He and I sold a farm in Lackaprow County that the family had a super close relationship with their tenant. They're like family, but yet they still need to get a strong price for the beneficiaries. And it's this tussle between how do you get a good price? How do you honor somebody locally or a connection, or solve a family disagreement? You know, for many of these families that were selling a farm, if it's a $2 million farm, it's paying for college, or it's paying for a family cabin, or if it's paying for the next opportunity for their kids. So, you know, most families want a strong price, but it's also what they're going to do with the funds after that.
Yeah, like real bills, real dollars, solving real problems, things that really matter, that are going to change that next generation's life, because that land was sold for a good price. So let's talk about prices. So as we get into the summer of 2026, and I know it changes daily, but what does farmland look like in 2026?
First of all, we've had an amazing 5.5 years. What's happened in the land business in September of 2020, the land market really started to take off. Like really, it had been high in 2012, 13, 14, and then a period of about 5 years where the values went down. And our business is heavily dependent on the price of corn and soybeans. That's really the key indicator. In September of 2020, China was buying more soybeans. Soybeans went way up in value. Corn then followed and went way up in value. In your line of work, Belinda, you're in the weather business. I would say the business today, it's strong, it's steady. It's a very stable market, but I would say mostly sunny with a chance of some clouds is what I would say. And when I say that, you know, in the last 18 months, we have seen some market conditions that have put some pressure on the market, like increased fertilizer costs, increased gas prices. Soybeans today, or corn today in the city of Welmer, if you sold a bushel of corn today, you'd get around $4 a bushel. If you sold it in May of 2022, you'd get $7 a bushel. So, but our business is very stable. It's very predictable, but we are handling some projects differently right now because of some of these market pressures.
So a lot of variables. Probably one of the things that you do is help the families with timing. Like, when should we do this? They come to you and say, when should we do this, right?
That's correct. And I will tell you, Belinda, those conversations bring Glen and I a lot of joy. Something that we strongly believe in is free consultation for families. Glen and I spend a lot of our time having conversations that are complimentary, they're confidential, where we just simply sit down with families and answer a ton of questions. And we just have conversation after conversation to help guide them. And something that's been instilled in Glen and I from our parents is to treat a family as if you were part of that family, and to think of their farm. I get a little bit emotional. To think of their farm as if we owned it ourselves. We might be hired in one conversation, 10 conversations, 10 years later, or never. We're a big believer, even if they keep that farm, a family has to do what's best for them. But if we can honor them, have conversations with them, treat them well, and just give them free advice and speak from our heart and our head as to all that we know, that is the way that we want to run the business.
And you come with so much information and so much history. So I imagine when you listen to them and then you're able to respond with these very educated answers, I bet it's really soothing to them that they walk away and then they're able to make that decision with really good, credible information that you're able to offer them. So I think that's the magic of Fladeboe Land, because you guys have done it for so long, over 50 years.
Well, and to Kristine's point, like literally, I think of the last 25 years of working with her as a business partner and a sibling, obviously, we never think about, oh, we're selling the Swenson farm next Thursday. What I'm thinking about is they have one farm to sell. It's a huge thing in their life. We better do everything that we can to do it well and to make good decisions. I mean, like, when we talk about some additional market factors affecting the value of farmland right now, there's times that an auction is the best way to sell the farm, but there's times that also a public listing or private negotiation, because really what we're doing is we're analyzing what are the key variables that will lead to the greatest likelihood of the most positive outcome for those families.
Oh, so there's a number of ways to go about it, and that's what you also can educate these families about.
That's right. In our business, in a live auction or an online only auction or an auction process is a great way to sell farmland. And the main reason is that in a township, when a farm comes for sale, there might not have been a farm available for 15 years. Like when the neighbor's farm is for sale, if you don't buy it, you will likely not live long enough to buy it again. So then the issue becomes, to one person, it might be worth $10,000 an acre. To the other two people, it's worth $14,000.
Because they're neighbors.
Yeah. Or because they recognize that if they don't buy it, they'll never have the chance. I mean, like, that said, though, in times where market conditions may be a little bit more challenging, sometimes we'll list a farm or put a for sale sign and establish the price. A lot of our business, the public never sees it. It never is public because we're asked to negotiate the sale with a family member, their tenant. And so really what we're looking at is what are the best tools in this moment of time that will really guide our decisions. The weather, is a huge factor in our business. In the last couple of years, if we've had way too much moisture out here and the crops are drowned out, and you'll see it, that's of concern. And then obviously how we handle that farm is different. So it's not only emotional business, but it's also we have to look at the best evidence to make the best decisions in this moment of time.
I'll just say too, Belinda, we often kind of look at it as if a doctor would, where we consider ourselves a specialist and we need to study that farm. Should it be brought to market by auction? Should it be a traditional listing? Should it be a private sale negotiation? Glen and I spend a lot of time simply listening to families and their goals. And then once we do a lot of listening and finding out of their goals, we give a recommendation to families.
So, because as you were mentioning, the tillable farmland market is just delicate. So that's not just always the factor that is the main thing, right?
The main thing with farmland, and the reason why overall it's very stable, is because it's hard to buy. That's the main thing. It's a product that, you can drive down the city street in Welmer today and you can choose this house or that house or that house. The farmland business, like I said, you might not see another farm for 10 years in a township. And so, really what we're looking at is overall the business is very stable, but there are moments of time that you have to use different tools in your toolbox. And we believe that the farmland market is going to stay strong for the next number of years. But when you look at, interest rates that are higher, you look at fertilizer prices and gas prices, we have to recognize, and soybeans being lower and corn being lower, that not every family can afford the next farm that's right available next door to them. And so then you have to look at different tools to sell it.
Is there a situation where with some of these farms being on the periphery of the suburbs that the decision is, do we sell it to a developer or do we sell it to a farmer?
Well, we deal with that all the time. And matter of fact, in West Central and Western Minnesota, the big thing that we're seeing right now is solar and wind, and families looking at alternative uses of that land, not just, like the city of Renville going north or west, but, should we look at a wind lease? Should we look at a solar lease? If we were having this conversation with you 20 years ago, we'd talk about soils, we'd talk about drainage, we'd talk about the price of corn and soybeans. Our business today, the land business, even though it's tillable farmland, all of those considerations are driving a big factor in this business. The other thing, to your point, every day the United States loses several thousand acres of farmland because of the suburbs expand or exurbs expand, or it goes into wind or solar or something else. And obviously then the total number of acres available in the country diminishes, and the price usually goes up because of it. But the very big picture, 85% of the farmland that we sell, like if we sold 5 farms next week, there's an 85% likelihood that the local farmer would buy it, that a local farmer, and it would stay in production for the next 30 or 40 or 50 years. But, it's interesting. We just sold a farm just a few weeks ago that that land will ultimately be owned by the state of Minnesota. It'll be open to public hunting. It will be preserved forever for the public to use that. And we are seeing certain very positive aspects of how of an additional use of the land that's not just tillable land, that's then becomes open or protected. We've done a lot of work with the Minnesota Land Trust on conservation easements and all of those things. And so the story is really mostly it stays in farmland, but ultimately sometimes it's becomes some other community asset that everyone can benefit from.
And so some families are donating it like to the state of Minnesota or to Pheasants Forever or some organization like that. That's interesting too. I didn't think of that. So as I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like getting top dollar is usually the main concern for these families. Is that right? Getting the top dollar?
I would say that most families do want a very fair price. But you're right, that's not always the number one goal. As Glen said, it's often very emotional, and it's important for us to tell the family story, tell the farm story. And for some of these people, legacy is super important to them. And so there again, we try to really listen to those goals and do our best to marry the proper method. I'll just add one thing that's very important in our business is supply and demand. I think what's really keeping these prices overall stable is there is a lot of demand for farmland. Buying farmland is very popular. People want that in their portfolio, but there's less supply than there is demand. So we really have that in our favor as far as stability.
Well, and Belinda, when we look at, the main goals for most families, if we're selling 160 acres in Renville County, Minnesota, and let's say the county average right now is 11,300 per tillable acre, most families will want the final price to be in that neighborhood, whether it's, a little bit higher, a little bit lower. The first biggest mistake that a lot of families make is they don't know what it's worth. They really don't know what it's worth. And as you said to begin the conversation, it does change every day. If corn goes up by 40 cents today, that farm is worth more money tomorrow. But here's the other thing that has changed right now in the business, and this is very significant. We are not financial advisors. We tell every family I'm not an attorney, I'm not a financial advisor, but we're in conversations every day with families, and their core question they're asking is, if we sell the farm and it's worth $2 million, what are we going to do with the funds? Right now, because of interest rates, yesterday the 10-year treasury was at 4.6%, and cash on cash rate of return for farmland is not great. Long-term appreciation with cash on cash is very good. But most of those families, if they sell a farm right now for $11,000 a tillable acre, without a stepped-up basis or a capital gains consequence, can reinvest those funds in another vehicle or tool and make twice as much money because of where the interest rates are at. And so for a lot of the families that we're meeting with, they're in their 60s and 70s, there's 3 kids. Those families are using the cash rent to pay for college or a cabin or whatever life expense they have. They know that they can't own the farm forever. They know that the prices are high, but they also know that they can take the money and put it in another fund. And that is a big deal right now. That's a huge reason why a lot of families are selling, is that other investment alternative. And that's not for me to say that I'm not bullish long-term on farmland. I am. I think it's a great asset long-term. But at some point it is sold in most cases, and you want to sell when the prices are strong, and you want to have an alternative investment that creates some opportunity for your family.
Yeah. And so when people walk away from these conversations, the listening, the talking, I think the bottom line is the goal for you and your company is that they walk away with a ton more information and they have some more peace about it because of all the things you just said. it really might make sense for them to do it in this way or this way. And I think that's the key, right? Is the piece that they walk away with. Whatever they make the decision, whatever that decision is, I mean.
Well, and they want it to be honoring. When you sell the family farm and you think of, God, today's the day and life moved quickly and it's time to sell it. And, they're going to invest the funds in a family cabin, or they're going to pay for their grandkids to go to college. They want to walk through that process, honoring the legacy of their family. On average, in the United States, the average inheritance is like $40,000. So if you inherit $2 million of farmland, you're in the top 3 or 4%. But for a lot of our families, they're really saying, God, let's sell it. Let's make it honoring. Let's celebrate mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, and then let's do really wise things with the funds. Most of these people aren't going to Vegas after we sell these things. I mean, most of these people are saying, God, I can pay for, Bobby and Susie's 4 years at Gustavus or St. Olaf, or, that's what they're doing.
I mean, you could go to dinner.
Yeah, you could go to dinner.
But maybe not to Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Bring grandma and grandpa to dinner, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just add, Belinda, and I say this with a very humble spirit, Glen and I will always be a work in progress. We're very proud, humbly proud of our 48 years in business. Our parents started this company. We're so blessed that they're still alive today on our family farm. And if you said to Glen and I, what is your single most core value? I would say care. Belinda, we care to a fault, but we can't run the business any other way. We can't run the business any other way, because when we're working with a family, whether they sell or not, this asset is substantial. They might keep it, they might sell it, but it's a really big deal. And selling farmland is a really big deal. Our parents have said to us all along, our whole lives, the day that you take the business lightly, get out of the business.
It's not lost on us that, growing up on this farm north of Wilmer, and I watched my dad picking rocks, and, we were out there picking rocks. I watched them make mortgage payments their whole life to get the land paid off. There's a piece of this is like honoring the past of how hard they had to work to pay for these things.
Yeah.
Many of those years in the early 80s, it was tough, but now it's this huge gift, that's just doing remarkable things. On the way out to this interview this morning, I got a call on a farm that's being gifted that a couple nonprofits will inherit the proceeds, and it'll change lives for decades because of those funds. It's a big deal. It's just fascinating. It's the best part of the business. It is amazing to get up in the morning and say, God, we've had this unique involvement with the community that is pretty consequential, both from a personal family aspect, but also a community aspect.
I mean, yeah, and your part in it is going to make it actually happen. So you're not the one that owned it, and you're not the one that gets it. But if it wasn't for you, it wouldn't happen. And how wonderful that is. So when you lay your head on the pillow that night, you're like, I did something. I had a chance to do something really important today. And a lot of people don't get to do that. So congratulations to you guys on that.
And I would say that's so kind of you. The best compliment in Glen and I get isn't the commission. It's when a family says, I would have hired you again and again and again. And again, I say that with the humble spirit. But oftentimes when the closing happens, Belinda, we're not ready to say goodbye to these families. We fall in love with these families that we serve because you're walking alongside of them often at an emotional pinnacle time in their life. That is a privilege.
The other piece, that's been really fun is the stories of these farms. I mean, now when we look at our business today of not just, where corn and soybeans are at or tillable land values are at, like how to really sell a piece of land, you got to tell the story of the farm, really the story of like, not just which family owned it or how long they've owned it. We're selling a farm right now just north of Wilmer, very close to our home farm, the Duininck farm. This farm has been in the family since 1959 for, 67 years. The kids now live in the Twin Cities. One lives in Virginia. They're going to sell the farm. And to really sell that farm well, I mean, it happens to be right next to a state bike trail. It's right next to public hunting ground that you can walk, you can enjoy. It's right next to Wilmer and the Spicer and the lakes. But you also have to tell the family story of the Stuhlins and what they grew up with and what, their stories of being on that farm. because it isn't, selling land is not like, oh, it's the car and you can just buy another one 3 years from now. You're really buying a piece of history. And, for that moment of time, you're going to own it and then somebody else will own it. But telling the story is a huge piece of this.
Yeah. Who lived on that dirt and how important was that dirt, and kind of what it did for that family, what it could do for your family if you buy it. It isn't just a car. You're right. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't have a chance to ask you, or anything that you'd like to say?
I mean, the simple beauty of, like, today, the sun is shining, the grass is green, the guys are in the field. You got to love this business and, loving the outdoors and what we have in Minnesota.
It's true. I mean, forecasting for Minnesota for so long, you kind of picture yourself, okay, what is this person, what forecast do these people need? Because what are they up to today? And what are they doing in this beautiful place? Yeah, it's been my job for a long time, so I do care about it.
Well, I want to give you a compliment. As Glen has said, we have known you for a long time. We have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for you, personally and professionally. And when I think of you, you have had a profound impact on the state of Minnesota. Just super grateful for you and all the lives that you've touched.
Oh, thank you.
This has been such a joy.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think God-given stage that I was given and told to, and, always loved science and always loved weather, and able to push so many other young people into STEM and science, which I think is so important as well. So thank you. I appreciate that. Well, this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I know there's so much more to learn. And so all of this will be available for everybody. And this is fun.
We'll do it again, Belinda.
Thanks for having me.
Sounds good.